The hacker's tool belt. Hackers have a lot of tools in their tool belt that the average user hasn't even heard of. These tools aren't incredibly special or secretive, but most people simply don't understand what they are or how to use them. The honest truth is that there are boatloads of different tools out there that can be used to break into a system or be used to identify vulnerabilities. Oh, and guess what? Surprisingly enough, many of them are completely free to use. Part of the reason many of these tools are free to use stems from the fact that many of the tools were written for Linux, and the vast majority of Linux software is free of charge because it is protected by the GNU license. Some of the most popular types of hacking tools that we'll take a hands-on look at in this guide include vulnerability scanners. We'll take a look at one called OpenVAS later in this book. Port scanners. We'll also see how to use a port scanner called Nmap. Packet sniffers. This software listens to and records all of the information flowing over your network, and we'll use one later for a man in the middle attack demonstration. Password crackers. These tools are used to uncover the password to a system. While this certainly isn't a comprehensive list of the tools a hacker has in their tool belt, these are certainly some of the most popular and most important tools you need to be aware of. Let's take a closer look at each one of these types of tools in detail. Vulnerability scanners. Vulnerability scanners were originally designed to help white hat hackers find potential security holes in their computing systems to plug up the security holes before a black hat hacker could find a way to penetrate the system. However, these scanners can be used for both good and evil. Black hat hackers can easily leverage a vulnerability scanner to find a weakness in a network, server, or host to facilitate an attack. And these scanners are pretty easy to use, too. Though some of the fine-tuning and tweaking of the scan you want to perform can get a little complex, by and large all you need to do is point the scanner at a target and click a button. But a vulnerability scanner on its own isn't very dangerous. A black hat hacker will then need to use other types of software in order to take advantage of the vulnerabilities found with the scanner. Vulnerability scanners are really only used to identify weaknesses, plain and simple. Later in this book we're going to go through the installation process of one such scanner named OpenVAS. We will be installing it in a Linux environment, and the installation process is the hardest part. After we run through the demo later in the book, all you need to do is supply an IP address and click a single button. Once the scanner is up and running, it is ridiculously easy to use. Pros of vulnerability scanners: help make systems more secure by identifying weaknesses that an administrator or security expert can then address and take care of. Mitigates the risk of hackers taking advantage of a system. They are fun to use. Cons of vulnerability scanners: sometimes they are not perfect and have the potential to miss the latest system vulnerabilities. They rely partially on a database of vulnerabilities that needs to be continuously updated. Hackers can take advantage of them to find ways to break into a system. Port scanners. A port scanner is basically a software utility that can be used to determine which ports a host is accepting connections on. For example, if I wanted to see if I could pull up a web page from any hosts on my network, I would scan my subnet to see if any hosts have port 80 open. But this is a basic example. The information obtained from a port scanner can help attackers read between the lines and determine the purpose of a host on their network. For example, if a port scanner showed that a host had port 9100 open, you could reasonably assume that the host you scanned is either a printer or a print server, since port 9100 is used for printing. I know, printers are boring. But it is amusing to think that you could send print jobs to your neighbor's printer and print anything you wanted to after identifying their printer with a port scanner. Don't actually do that, it's just funny to think about. But think how far an attacker could take this concept. By identifying the services that are running on a host, they can determine what type of server they are dealing with, whether or not they have found an infrastructure device like a router, switch, or firewall, or find ways to attack end-user computers by making connections on their active ports. Now take a moment to consider things from a white hat perspective. An ethical hacker could use a port scanner to verify that all of the ports on a network that should be closed are actually closed. It is a useful verification tool that can be used to prevent vulnerabilities. Layer 4 scanners. Remember how important I told you the ISA model is? Well, there is a whole class of scanners that targets Layer 4, the transport layer of the ISA model. Specifically, these scanners look for minute details in the operation of Layer 4 protocols such as TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, and UDP, User Datagram Protocol, to find weaknesses in hosts. The inner workings of these protocols are actually quite complex, but realize that there is a process called a handshake that two hosts make before they form a connection. By tricking and manipulating the handshake process, attackers can cause serious harm to systems. In the form of a DOS, denial of service, whereby an attacker breaks the logic in these protocols to cause a host or service to stop functioning or severely underperform. Packet sniffers. Packet sniffers are invaluable tools that are able to capture, store, and display all of the information that is flowing over a cable or transmission medium such as a wireless interface. By using a packet sniffer, you'll be able to see in great detail all of the conversations that computers are having with each other. You can see connection attempts, file transfers, and even Google searches. Packet sniffers are especially dangerous when data is being sent in plain text, which is another way of saying that the data isn't encrypted before it is sent to another host. So, for example, if your username and password weren't encrypted before being sent to a server, an attacker can leverage a packet sniffer to capture that data and steal your username and password. But some packet sniffers, such as Wireshark, are difficult for newbies to read because they simply don't understand how the various protocols operate. A packet sniffer will show an attacker the nitty-gritty details of a traffic stream's raw data. More specifically, it can show you the IP address of a host that initiated a connection, how another host responded to the connection attempt, any data that was sent during the session, and what type of data is flowing over the connection via its port number. Have you ever wondered how ISPs can see what type of data is flowing over their network and determine which hosts are visiting specific websites? Packet Sniffers are but one tool among many that they use to achieve this goal. Password cracking utilities. Hackers frequently use tools called password crackers to gain unauthorized access to computer systems. Cracking is basically a term used to describe the process of obtaining a password that is hidden or stored in a protected format. For example, there are wireless password cracking tools that allow an attacker to gain the password to a Wi-Fi network without needing to know the security key upfront. But there are many other types of passwords and methods used by these utilities. Some people have heard of the brute force password attack before, and these can take a long time to perform. In the brute force process, a computer will try to guess every conceivable password to gain access to a system by trying every unique combination of characters. In addition, there are also dictionary-based attacks that are useful for breaking weak passwords. These types of attacks take a more pragmatic approach to cracking a password because they try passwords based upon a dictionary of common and popular phrases. Typically, an attacker will try a dictionary attack before a brute force attack because there is a higher chance of cracking a password with a dictionary-based attack. Brute force attacks have one colossal downfall: they can be extremely slow due to the millions and millions of combinations they need to try to be successful cracking passwords. The process can last for days. Dictionary-based attacks, on the other hand, are typically much faster because they don't have near as many password combinations to attempt.